Wind speeds in excess of 160 miles per hour, more than 2.4 trillion gallons of rain per day. Hurricanes are a destructive force that can crush anything and everything in its path. Are you ready for one? Tonight in a special presentation, WTXL ABC 27's weather team takes a look at what would happen during a potential hurricane hitting our area. Hurricane season 2016. What if?
Born from a tropical disturbance, it grows in strength as it approaches, gathering speed, spiraling, intensifying. The power and fury of a hurricane is unmatched in nature. Fortunately for the Big Bend coast, a hurricane has not hit head-on in over 30 years, but we need to prepare for one every year. What if a hurricane were to hit home? Over the next half hour, we'll examine that very question. How would WTXL cover it? What local resources are available? And how would organizations designed to handle natural disasters respond? We monitor the open Atlantic Basin waters days before any local threat is determined with our Tropics Watch briefing in every newscast. A suspicious disturbance appears to grow in the warm ocean and organizes into a tropical depression. The National Hurricane Center releases strength and path forecasts every 6 hours. It strengthens further using the heat from the ocean waters as its fuel. It becomes a tropical storm and is given a name. The forecast trends indicate that the warm Gulf waters may be a target for its future movement.
A wide variety of forecast data is available at our disposal. We use these models along with our own knowledge of tropical weather as guidance in our forecasting efforts. The pattern eventually leads the tropical storm into the southeastern Gulf, where it grows into a Category 1 hurricane. The outlook narrows its forecast path over the eastern Gulf. The Panhandle and Big Bend are within the hurricane's forecast cone of possible movement. It becomes slightly clearer that the hurricane may give our region greater issues. The Tropical Storm Watch is issued for the coastal sections of the viewing area, meaning tropical storm conditions may be experienced in the watch zone within 48 hours.
The storm team starts continuous staffing in the studio. We keep you informed with the latest information on our social media outlets and start periodic live forecast updates throughout our television channels and our mobile app. We also keep our Weather Now channel fresh with the latest storm forecast and frequent live updates. Our news team is active in studio and out in the field, dedicated to gathering storm information from emergency management and law enforcement, even in times of danger.
As the hurricane keeps its focus on the northeastern Gulf, the danger increases for the Big Bend. The Tropical Storm Watch is upgraded to a hurricane watch, then a hurricane warning. The warning means hurricane conditions are expected within 36 hours and also includes some inland counties. In the meantime, we crunch numbers, analyze new weather data, check observations, and hope for the best.
In advance of a potential direct landfall, we increase our coverage and information streams. The Storm Team Weather Center becomes my temporary home as I diligently track the approaching storm with help from the remaining meteorologists and forecasters on the team. We extend our coverage on Weather Now, and when it becomes clear that the hurricane will carry its wind and rain into a large part of our region, we stay on the air on all of our channels with a steady, continuous, reliable flow of news and weather information, while you stay inside in your safe place until the storm goes by.
We understand the what if of a tropical system impacting our area, but what's our current state heading into this year's hurricane season? The Big Bend has received about 3 to 5 inches more rainfall than average this year, with higher totals in southwest Georgia and in the Florida Panhandle. And that's wreaked havoc on our local rivers. In early January, the Apalachicola River had its 6th highest crest on record, and the Flint River in Bainbridge had its 11th highest crest ever. Because the ground can't handle any more heavy rain without flooding, hydrologists say the worst-case scenario this year is a slow-moving tropical system like Debbie back in 2012.
Debbie came in a situation where the grounds were relatively dry. You bring a storm like that into North Florida this time of year, early June, early July, when we're still relatively wet, the flooding can be quite significant.
Ahead, we show how community organizations rally together before tropical mayhem strikes and how teamwork is crucial in rebuilding afterwards. When a hurricane hits, the damage and destruction can be massive. Areas left with power outages, which can last for days. People forced out of homes. Food supplies cut short. There are organizations that respond quickly when a natural disaster occurs. Their speed to aid can be the difference between life and death. Surviving a hurricane and the chaos it can leave behind heavily depends on how folks prepare long before tropical troubles threaten. Regardless of the level of readiness, to borrow from a familiar phrase, it takes a village to start the recovery process and bring a regional rebound to reality.
The fear that I felt that we were going to die is overpowering. It's really... And to see the devastation out there, and to see the people, and to see how sad everyone was, and how desperate. When the people saw the Red Cross coming or heard about the Red Cross being in town, you could see that there was some relief in their face. You could see that finally somebody's coming to help them.
Whether it's in the Northeast with Hurricane Sandy, or another ferocious storm lashing out at our region, a troop of individuals and organizations rushes in to assist in the aftermath.
We actually partner with a lot of the different agencies. Our number one partners are probably our government agencies, our emergency management.
The American Red Cross is a familiar player in storm response work. They are the organization most people know and hear about in a natural disaster situation, but the labor is shared in many ways.
We're part of the public safety complex here, so they're our next door neighbors, and we keep in contact with them almost on a daily basis about what's going on in the community, whether there's any weather-related issues or other events going on. In preparation for hurricane season, the partnerships increases and ramps up.
Much of the work is performed by people who give their time without expecting a monetary payback.
There would not be a Red Cross if there wasn't volunteers. They comprise 90% of our workforce. So volunteers are who we are. But if you get on a disaster relief operation, there's 50 or more different opportunities and ways that you can participate in it, whether you're doing sheltering, whether you're driving our emergency response vehicle and handing out meals, whether you're doing disaster assessment. There's just a whole lot of different opportunities.
There isn't a one-size-fits-all approach to immediate storm response, but these organizations do their best to adapt to any situation the tropical season may try to present.
We had the first annual Disaster Institute here at our chapter, and it was a region-wide institute. And what we did is we acted like it was a disaster relief operation. And so we utilized our partners. We utilized the Baptist Relief, Disaster Relief. They cooked all of our meals for us. Our National Guard, our staff and volunteers sheltered there.
With the help of organizations like the Red Cross, those in need have hope.
We needed that assistance. We needed that hope to come in, that light, to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Protecting your home in the event of a hurricane or severe weather is critical. The difference between being ready and not can cost you thousands of dollars. More important than money, if you're not prepared, it could cost lives. We went to the experts to get information on what you should do to protect your home. They say plywood is a great defense to cover up any openings your home has.
Once you get a break through glass from tree branches, water incoming, then your interior damage is, as a normal rule, almost total.
Half-an-inch thickness of plywood can provide flexibility and sturdiness.
Ideally, on your average half-inch sheet of plywood, you're looking at roughly $26 or more for pressure-treated wood.
That $26 piece of wood could save you hundreds or even thousands of dollars in damages. A single sheet of plywood can protect up to 2 or even 3 windows. When you are trying to figure out what size of wood you'll need, experts say measure your windows twice. Then add a ½ inch of room to all of its dimensions. And if you can't cut it yourself, ask your local hardware store to see if they can do it for you.
A house or home is a huge investment for most people, and you really need to protect it.
And after a storm hits, make sure you store the wood someplace safe for reuse, or as a template to cut more plywood for future protection.
If the worst were to happen, the first thing people would want to know is, are you okay? And within the last few years, social media has become a powerful resource to update loved ones. If there's one person who knows the power of the internet to notify their community, it's Dave Bujak, the emergency manager at Florida State University. He's seen social media evolve and be a point of reference for many when disaster strikes.
People want to know, how is my family, how are my friends, and they want to know now.
In the fall of 2014, Facebook released Safety Check. If you're near the point of impact of a disaster, like a hurricane, Facebook will notify you asking if you're okay. You can then tap the I'm Safe button, which will notify your Facebook community.
If nothing else, that helps reassure your family and friends that, okay, they're at least alive, they're safe, they have a plan.
And for those who think that this may only be a resource for kids to use, Bujak says otherwise.
Now, if you look at my demographics on Facebook, the 18 to 24 is my smallest box. The other demographics are in the older categories.
The fact that more and more people are on Facebook makes it a great tool to keep loved ones informed with a simple click of a button. This allows you to quickly move on and get back to the potential cleanup.
Up next, they say those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. As we continue, we'll take a look at our past to try and predict what could happen if a hurricane hit our area in the future.
As history shows us, we are always prone to have it repeated. In our area, we've not only been hit with hurricanes, but many tropical storms, which can be just as devastating.
Port Leon was an up-and-coming town back in the early 1840s. Ships came ashore with various goods, which were then transported to Tallahassee by train. But on September 13th, 1843, a violent hurricane hit the small town head-on. Local historian Joe Konech says the hurricane was so strong, it washed out the railroad bridge crossing the St. Marks River.
That bridge wound up on the Wakulla River. It basically lifted the bridge up, carried it all the way up the Wakulla River.
Behind me is the St. Marks River. About a half mile down is where Port Leon used to reside. It's a place you can't even get to by car. That's because it was wiped off the map. 10-foot storm surges coupled with 80-mile-per-hour winds were no match for the town.
So as a result, the hurricane had a great deal to do with, of course, the demise of Port Leon. It fell apart. Nothing was ever rebuilt there.
10-foot storm surges wouldn't return until Hurricane Dennis struck the Florida Panhandle in July 2005. Hurricanes don't need to strike directly to cause major damage. Take, for instance, Hurricane Dennis set back in 2005. Further away than Hurricane Kate in the 1980s, but causing significantly higher storm surge.
We were pretty well prepared for it. We just weren't ready for the extra 2 or 3 feet that we got.
Dennis's abnormal storm surges were influenced by the winds blowing around the large system.
It turned out to be the highest tide that anybody in St. Marks alive has ever seen.
There was no rain, very, very mild wind. It was just water, just kept coming.
The city of St. Marks had over 20 permits to redo homes after the massive surge. Even the St. Marks Refuge wasn't spared.
Dennis came in with a weird storm surge where it filled the marsh and literally came over the levees and filled up all of our man-made pools with salt water.
Refuge Ranger Robin Will says that if you drive down the road toward the lighthouse, the dead trees you see were killed due to the flooding caused by Dennis. Massive damage can occur far from the dangerous eye wall of a major hurricane. And experiences like Dennis help keep coastal residents aware and ready.
Our biggest concern is that we will one day be hit by a hurricane, actually hit by a hurricane, which we haven't been since I've lived in Florida.
Whether in the Big Bend or South Georgia, the area is just as vulnerable to tropical systems today as it was hundreds of years ago.
Specifically, along the coastline, the largest threat is rising water. The Big Bend coast is unique in the way that it is shaped. It is concave, meaning that it curves inward. While the shape allows for a variety of different tide times from west to east, inside this bend there lies a particular threat with its geography. Any water coming in from a tropical storm or a hurricane will continue to gather in the waters of the bend. This result can be disastrous, as the water gathered would eventually mean even higher storm surge. That is why, even if a storm moves west of our local area, threats are not zero. Make sure you stay tuned to WTXL ABC 27 so you can be aware in case the waters come your way.
If a hurricane is forecasted to impact the region, do you know what to do or how to prepare? Straight ahead, we'll get some expert advice on just what to do.
After a hurricane has blown through an area, its power is self-evident. How one recovers from a tropical system begins with how one prepares. If you've lived in this area for a while now, you might have your preparedness routine memorized. But that routine may be kind of bland to accomplish each and every year. But with a little planning and avoiding procrastination, you can stay steps ahead of the storm, better prepared, and hurricane strong. Getting your home ready can take as little as an hour, or perhaps a weekend. Some preparation tasks are as simple as identifying easy-to-move yard items and figuring out where to store them before the winds howl. Going rooftop might be more time-consuming, but it's also important to clear the gutters of clutter, so water can flow down and away from your house. Have trees on your property inspected and trimmed accordingly to avoid structural damage from downed branches.
Ask yourself, when should I evacuate ahead of a hurricane? Then consider these tips. If you live farther away from the coast on relatively high ground and are a decent distance from a lake or a river, there might not be a need for you to leave. But if you live in a predetermined 5-tiered evacuation zone, know your zone and know the route on which to leave. Regardless of these, if law enforcement or emergency management officials call for you to leave your home, get out.
Having a survival kit, whether at home or away, is crucial in the first few days after a storm. Include the basics: 1 gallon of water per person per day for at least 3 days. Also have non-perishable foods and power supplies for electronics and communication devices. Each family's needs are unique, so look through our checklist on our digital severe weather guide to make sure nothing you need is left out.
Once you've completed your preparedness work, share your accomplishment and urge your friends to be ready too.
Go out and help your neighbors. Find someone who's elderly in your community that needs help trimming those tree limbs. You know, reach out and help someone else and volunteer in your community. That's what it's all about. If you're ready and your community is ready, you'll be able to bounce back after a disaster.
There's strength in numbers. Gather together in a group effort to make all our communities hurricane strong.
Hurricanes have always been known for their strong winds and deadly storm surge, but until recently there have only been advisories for wind probabilities. Starting in 2016, the potential storm surge flooding map becomes operational. This map will be able to give information on coastal regions and the chance they have to be inundated with water from storm surge. Starting in 2017, storm surge watches and warnings will likely join the well-known hurricane and tropical storm watches and warnings. The reasons for these planned additions are quite simple. Storm surge is normally the largest threat to life and property when a tropical cyclone threatens. As shown with Hurricane Dennis in 2005, these surges can occur far from where the strongest winds are located. It is imperative that anyone along the coast should know the threats they face, whether it be by wind or by water.
When we return, thoughts and tidbits from the storm team for you to remember and consider as we enter the long hurricane season. Seasonal hurricane forecasts, they're really just a number. The main number to keep in mind is one. One storm making a direct strike right in our area. That's all it takes to make any hurricane season memorable and devastating for us.
We already know our area has been impacted by tropical systems in the past. It's important to learn from these experiences to better prepare our homes for future ones.
And remember, before, during, and after a storm, don't panic. Keeping a level head can help save you time, resources, and even your life.
Make sure to have your weather-ready kit and plan ahead of time. Stay aware about what's going on in case a hurricane does impact our region. Have a plan for worst-case scenario situations, and make sure to prepare yourself and your loved ones. If you have any questions, feel free to message us on our social media accounts. We keep the latest up-to-date information there.
Being ready ahead of time and keeping these tips in mind can provide a sense of peace in a tumultuous time when the what-if scenario just happens to become reality.